Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at the FG42 bayonet, if I can get one of them out easily enough. It's just a little spike bayonet. I'm sure you're all familiar with the FG42 rifle that it fits to. Sorry I can't quite get them all in frame here due to the limiting height of my setup. Fantastic rifle, very interesting history. If you really want to delve deeply into the rifle and the history, I highly suggest you check out the Forgotten Weapons videos by Ian McCollum. He's done a fantastic piece on these. I'm lucky enough today that I've got access to both types of FG42 and all three types of FG42 bayonets. Now, in total, about 7,000 of the rifles and bayonets were made, and while the rifles were made by a couple of different manufacturers, the bayonets, as far as I can tell, were only made by GCY, which was, let me read off my sheet here, LOO Dietrich & Co. in Altenburg, and apparently they also made some of the rifles. Now, while about 7,000 of these were made, they were made over the course of a couple of years from 1943 to 1945. And these bayonets are incredibly scarce on the collector's market. And unfortunately they are heavily faked, and there are a lot of really high quality reproductions out there which sadly people are trying to pass off as the real deal. Luckily the German manufactured versions, there are little tells to spot whether or not they are original or not, and I'll go through that a little bit today. Now we'll jump into the history of the rifle and bayonet and where this all came from. So in 1941, I think it was, the Fallschirmjäger German paratroopers jumped into Crete, and at the time they were armed with conventional weapons like the Kar98K, the MP40, weapons that they already had, weapons that the rest of the Wehrmacht were using at the time, even though they were Luftwaffe, I believe. Now, when they jumped, they only had very small weapons on their person, like a pistol or grenade or a knife or something like that, and they had to make their way to weapons crates which were dropped separately. The type of harness they jumped with was a single mount in their back, which meant they couldn't strap large weapons to the sides of their bodies. As a result, they got absolutely chewed up by Commonwealth soldiers, particularly the Kiwis, New Zealand soldiers at Crete. So much so that Hitler decided that he was going to discontinue using airborne assaults in the future. So after this absolute stuff up of an operation, the Luftwaffe put a request in for a select fire handheld weapon in 8mm because they still wanted range. I say 8mm Mauser, not 8mm Kurz, which was the shorter cartridge for the STG-44. So they still wanted that range, that ability to reach out and touch targets at a distance, because in Crete, that's a big problem they had. Very, very good marksmen, Commonwealth marksmen, picking them off at a distance before they could get to their crates. So they made the request for this style of weapon through the army channels, and they were essentially blown off and offered the G41, which didn't meet their requirements. So the Luftwaffe started their own independent development of a weapon, which eventually led to the FG42, which is what we have here. A very iconic, beautiful rifle, very heavy kicking, I've heard, because it is a very small and very light rifle, chambered for 8mm Mauser, which is a very high-powered cartridge compared to quite a few of them out there. I think it was probably one of the most high-powered cartridges of the Second World War, behind maybe 6.5 Swede and 30-06. Now, Hitler had terminated future airborne operations. He wasn't a fan of the outcome at Crete, so that was it for the Fallschirmjäger. They were now light infantry, unfortunately. Göring, however, privately ordered the continuation of the project, which led to the development of these rifles here. And there were actually 7 models made or developed. So while there were only 2 that were ever mass produced, which was the Type E, which we refer to as Type E and Type G, Type 1, Type 2, all the rest were sort of like a prototype style of rifles. The FG42 actually saw its first use at the Gran Sasso raid in September of '43, where Mussolini was rescued. And while no shots were fired and no bayonets were used, that was their first operational use, which was reasonably high profile. So that's sort of the history of the rifle. They were used until the end of the war, and then after the war, it's an iconic weapon that was copied. The basic mechanism went into the design of the M60, and a number of these were actually donated to the NBA during the Vietnam War. I think it was the NBA, some North Vietnamese forces by the Soviets, so they saw some use there as well. So the bayonet for the FG42 is actually copied from the French Mus 36 rifle, which has this funny little contraption at the front here. You depress the button and out comes a reversible spike. Now, the French ones were actually substantially longer than this one. This one may in fact be an FG42 bayonet. There's no way to verify it. It has all the dimensions. In the first version of the FG42 bayonet was a shortened Mus 36 bayonet, so there is no way to tell if this is a Mus 36 converted to FG42 or if this is a shortened Mus 36, either done because the initial one was damaged or maybe as a reproduction to emulate an FG42 bayonet. Again, Ian McCollum from Forgotten Weapons has done a fantastic video on these where he's labelled it the French finger trap, because if you stick two of these together, a second rifle over the top here, they can be very difficult to get apart. That's why they later had this idiot hole drilled into the recess that holds it so that you can rotate it and depress the button. Anyway, we're not going to talk about the Mus 36 anymore. What we're interested in are the 3 generations of FG42 bayonets. So the very first one was the Mus 36. As you can see, we have a cruciform blade that has been ground down to a very specific point. I'll put the dimensions of the blade down at the bottom of the screen, and while sometimes the French marked these, this particular example isn't marked, which is not uncommon, but from what I've read, the Germans did not mark the shortened Mus 36s that were used, so there's no way to independently verify. It's nearly identical in length, so who knows. But this is the first style of FG42 bayonet, if in fact that's what it is. The second style came with the Type E or Type 1 FG42. Again, these have the same system in the front of the rifle. I'll move the bipod out of the way so that we can see. The bayonet goes through this recess here, and there's a little cup at the base that it's supposed to click into, like that. That's where it's kept for storage, and then to deploy it, like the Mus 36, we remove it and reverse it, and we're left with a nice little spike at the end of the muzzle. Not terribly long, but very simple. And let's be honest, you probably don't need too much. Like the British number 4 spike bayonets, it's really all you need. Now, something I should cover, in German service, bayonets are sockets, and I'll call this a socket bayonet because it doesn't have a handle and it's not a knife. When a bayonet is a knife or a saber, it's not called a bayonet, it's called a Seitengewehr or sidearm. So it's correct to call an FG42 bayonet a bayonet. So here we have the first type, the Mus 36 has been shortened, and then you'll see next to it, I'll bring the camera in a little bit closer so you can see. So here I'm comparing the similarities between the Mus 36 and the Type 2, but I think I made a mistake here, and I think the Type 2 is actually one of the Mus 36. If not, it's completely identical and I can't tell them apart. There's no German identifiers on it at all. Identical. So previously I've been identifying FG42 bayonets by having this depression, if that will focus, around the button. However, I've recently found Mus 36 bayonets that have that same depression. So this one doesn't actually have any FG42 markings on it. The later Type 2 version does. So I have no way to independently verify if this is an FG42 bayonet, although it does vary in construction very slightly to the Mus 36. So I'll leave a question mark over that for today. Now, while there were about 2,000 of the Type E rifles and their bayonets made, the most common version is the Type G. And I'll raise my camera again. There we go. The Type G. Again, if you want to know the differences between them, check out Ian's videos on Forgotten Weapons. He will do a better job explaining the rifles than I ever could. What they did was they actually simplified and shortened the bayonet. So I'll open the bipod. As you'll see, the bipod is now at the front instead of the rear. With the bipod deployed, it is quite difficult to get the bayonet out, but it can be done. And just like the previous model, the bayonet has a little cup at the bottom for the point. So I'll place it down with the bipod deployed just so I can show you. So here we have the MUS 36, which is pretty much the same as the other type. And here you can see everything has been shortened. The blade is about 10 mil shorter. The handle is also approximately 10 mil shorter. The knurled section in the middle has been deleted, and the little rib in the middle has been drastically reduced in size. Further, instead of a rounded cap on the end, we have a recession with 4 little scores around the circumference. So much simplified and significantly lighter as well. Now, as far as I can tell, the Type 2 or Type G bayonet, the later one, is the only one that has any markings, and this is the only one that you can really independently verify from what I can tell. So here on the front press button, you'll have a 2 stamped on the ramped surface right in there, and then on the rear press button on the ramped surface as well, you'll have a manufacturer's code stamped in there, but these are nearly always worn to the point where you cannot see them. If you jump on the website worldbayonets.com by Ralph Cobb, he's done a photograph of one of these stamps pieced together from multiple fragments of multiple bayonets, and that's the only way we've been able to identify that it's a GCY or Dietrich & Co stamp, so we know who manufactured these bayonets. Anyway, that's really all there is to say about them. They're extremely rare and difficult to track down. When you do track them down, I've seen them sell for $1,200 US just for a little pointy stick. So for a hardcore bayonet collector, it might be a great find, but for someone like me, I like something that I can hold, something like a traditional German Seitengewehr as opposed to a spike or socket. So they're not terribly exciting. The rifles they fix to, probably about the most exciting rifle you could come across, but the bayonets can be a little bit bland. Anyway guys, as always, if I've made any errors or you have additional information, please comment below. We'd love to hear from you and see what you have to say. I'm going to endeavour to try and come across a few more examples of FG42s and their bayonets, because I really want to verify the... Look, for the purpose of this, I'm going to call them Type 1, 2 and 3. Type 1, MUS 36, Type 2 is the Type E, and Type 3 is the Type G. That's what I'm going to label them as. I really want to be able to verify the Type E, that this in fact is one, and this isn't in fact just a MUS 36 bayonet that has been stuck in, because it is identical to the MUS 36. So for all I know, these two are the same, and I haven't been able to examine the second type. Anyway, use this as you will, and thanks for watching.